And now, A Can of Vacuum by L. Ron Hubbard, as read by the Bathroom Reader, for a one-take toilet top audiobook production. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who is currently attempting to lift Russia's Thunderstone with the powers of his mind. A Can of Vacuum. Bigby Owen Pettigrew reported one fine August day to the 19th Project Experimental Forces of the Universe, United Galaxies Navy, and was apparently oblivious of the fact that ensigns, newly commissioned out of the civilian UIT and utterly ignorant of military matters, were not likely to overwhelm anyone with the magnificence of their presence. The adjutant took the orders carelessly and as carelessly said his routine speech. "Space Admiral Banning is busy, but it will count as a call if you leave your card, Mr. Pettigrew." Bigby Owen Pettigrew chewed for a while on a toothpick and then said, "It's all right. I'll wait. I got lots of time." The office yeoman stared and then carefully restrained his mirth. The adjutant looked carefully at Pettigrew. There was a lot of Pettigrew to look upon, and the innocent-appearing mass of it grinned a friendly grin. The adjutant leaned back. The Universal Institute of Technology was doubtlessly a fine school so far as civilian schools went, and it undoubtedly turned out very good recruits for the Science Corps. But this wasn't the first time that the adjutant had wished that a course in naval courtesy and law could be included here. The practical joking 19th would probably take this boy apart, button by stripe and cell by hair. Obviously, Pettigrew really thought an ensign could call on a space admiral just like that. "Perhaps," said the adjutant, "you have some important recommendations to make concerning the way he's running the project?" Pettigrew shook his head solemnly, all sarcasm lost on him. "Nah, just like to get the lay of the land, kinda." "Are you sure," said the adjutant, "that you haven't some brilliant new theory you'd like to explain to him? Perhaps a new hypothesis for nebula testing?" With a calm shake of his head, Pettigrew said, Shucks, no. I'm way behind on my lab work." The yeoman at the side desk was beginning to turn deep indigo with strangling mirth, and managed, only at the last instant, to divert guffaws into a series of violent sneezes. "You got a cold there?" said Pettigrew. The poor yeoman floundered out, made the inside of number 4 hangar, and there was found some 10 minutes later in a state of aching exhaustion by several solicitous mates who thought he had been having a fit. He tried for some time to communicate the cause of all this, but his mates did not laugh. They looked pityingly at him. "Asteroid fever," said one. "Probably got a columbar thrombosis, poor fellow."
Looks more like halitosis,"
said a third, vainly trying to feel the yeoman's pulse.
"All right," said the yeoman. "All right. You're a flock of horse-faced ghouls. You wouldn't believe your mother if she said she was married. Doubt it, but he's here, I tell you, and that's what he did. And you mark my words, give that guy 10 days on this station and none of you will ever be the same again." The yeoman spoke louder and truer than he knew. Carpdike, the sad and suffering project assignment officer, who felt naked when he went to dinner with a couple of exploding cigars and a dematerializing pork chop, leaned casually up against the hangar door. The enlisted men had not seen him, and they jumped. When they saw it was Carpdike, they jumped again, further. "What?" said Carpdike. "Did you say this young gentleman's name was?"
Pettigrew," the yeoman said, very nervous.
Said Carpdike. "Well, man, I'm sure you have work to do."
He was gloomy now, the way he always got just before he indulged his humor. group disappear. Karpdyke went sadly back to his office and sat there for a long, long time. He might have been studying the assignment chart. It reached 12 feet up and 18 feet across and was a three-dimensional painting of 2 million light-years of universe. Here and there, colored tracks marked the last known whereabouts of scout ships which were possibly going about their duties, collecting invaluable fuel data, and possibly not. Karpdyke grew sadder and sadder until he looked like a bloodhound. His chief Raymaster's mate chanced to look up, saw it, and very, very nervously looked down. Just what was coming, the chief knew not. He hoped it wasn't coming to him. Karpdyke had been known to stoop so low as to rig a bridge room's quarters with lingerie the morning of the wedding. He had even installed Limburger cheese in a spaceship's air supply. And once, well, the chief just sat and shuddered to recall it. The door opened casually, and Bigby Owen Pettigrew, garbed newly in a Project Blister suitless mask, the fashion there on lonely Dowfium, where beards grew in indirect proportion to the number of women, entered under the cloud of innocence. The chief looked at Karpdyke, at Pettigrew, and then at Karpdyke again. The assignment officer was growing so sad that a tear trembled on one lid. The chief stopped breathing, but then, when no guardian angel snatched Pettigrew away from there, the chief started again. No reason to suffocate. "Hello," said Pettigrew cheerfully. "You're new here, aren't you?" mourned Karpdyke. "I just graduated from the UIT," said Pettigrew. "My name's Bigby. What's yours?" "I'm Scout Commander Karpdyke, Bigby. We always like to see our new boys happy with the place. You like your hangars?" "Oh, sure." "You found the transportation from the intergalaxy comfortable and prompt?" Sure. "And your room? It has a lovely view." "Well, now," said Pettigrew thoughtfully, "I don't think I noticed, but don't you bother yourself, Commander. It suits me. I don't want much." The chief was beginning to have trouble swallowing. He went to the water cooler. "Well, no," said Karpdyke, looking very, very mournful. "I am happy to hear that. But you're sure you wouldn't want me to change quarters with you?" "Change? Shucks, Commander. That's awful nice of you, but, well, no. My quarters suit me fine, and no doubt you're used to yours." The chief sprayed water over the assignment map, dived straight out the door, and kept going. A ululation of indescribable pitch faded away as he grew small across the rocket field. "Did he get sick or something?" asked Pettigrew. "A bit touched, poor man," said Karpdyke. 90 missions to Nebula M1894. "Poor fella," said Pettigrew, but he braced up under it. "Now then, Commander, is there anything you want me to solve or fix up? Anything you're stuck on or deep-ended with? They put me through the whole 10 years, and I sure want to do well by the service." He burnished a bit at the single jag of lightning on his lapel, which made him an ensign, Science Corps Experimental. "How are things at the base? You left Universal Admiral Collingsby well, I presume?" Sure, said Pettigrew. "Read me my oath himself." "You and 10,000 other plebes by Visograth," muttered Karpdyke. "Beg your pardon?" Nothing. I was just wondering whether we could best use your services, Pettigrew. We have to be careful. Don't want to waste any talent, you know." Sure not. I bet you have an awful time keeping up with problems, huh?" Vivid excitement manifested itself on Pettigrew's homely face for the first time. "There," said Karpdyke. "You've struck it. Keeping up. Ah, the weariness of it. Pettigrew, I'll wager you have no real concept of what we're up against here at 19. Mankind fairly hangs on our reports, sir." "I'll bet they do," said Pettigrew with enthusiasm. "Here we are," said Karpdyke.
located in the exact hub of the universe. Located for a purpose, Pettigrew. A purpose. Every exploding star must be investigated at once. Every new shape of a nebula must be skirted and charted. Every dark cloud must be searched for harmful material. Pettigrew, the emanations of all the universe depend on us. Upon us, Pettigrew.
And here he heaved a doleful sigh.
Ah, the weariness of it. The weariness.
Sure now, Commander. Don't take it hard. I mean to help out all I can. Just you tell me what you want done.
Karkdyke rose and convulsively gripped the ensign's hand.
You mean it, Pettigrew. You mean it truly. Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent.
Just you tell me, said Pettigrew. I'll do my best.
Karkdyke's exultation gradually faded and he sank back. He slumped and then shook his head.
No, you wouldn't do that. I couldn't ask you to do that.
Tell me,
begged Pettigrew.
Pettigrew,
said Karkdyke at last.
I have to confess, there is a problem. I hate to ask, it's so difficult.
Come on, tell me,
cried Pettigrew. Karkdyke finally let himself be roused. Very, very sadly, he said,
Pettigrew, it's the Rudy rays.
Just you... The what?
Rudy rays. Rudy rays. You've heard of them, certainly.
Well, now, Commander, Rudy rays?
Pettigrew, how long were you at UIT?
And Karkdyke put deep suspicion into it.
Why, 10 years, Commander, but Rudy rays, gosh, I didn't never hear of anything like them.
Pettigrew,
said Karkdyke sternly.
Rudy rays might be the foundation of a new civilization. They emanate, they expand, they drive, but they can't be captured, Pettigrew. They can't be captured.
Well, what?
A Rudy ray, said Karkdyke, is an indefinite, particular source of inherent and pre-dynamic energy inescapably linked to the formation of new stars. Why, Pettigrew, it is supposed that the whole universe might have been created from the explosion of just one atom made of Rudy rays.
Gosh, I thought...
You thought, cried Karkdyke. Ah, these professors. They pour ancient, mouldy, and outmoded data into the hapless heads of our poor defenseless young, and then send them out.
Oh, I believe you, said Pettigrew. It's just a kind of sudden. A new theory, like...
Of course, said Karkdyke, sadly but gently. I knew you would understand. This matter is top secret. Nay, it is bond top secret. Pettigrew, if we had just one quart of Rudy rays...
One what?
1 quart.
Pettigrew nodded numbly.
That's what I thought you said.
Pettigrew, with just 1 quart of Rudy rays, we could run the United Galactic Navy for 1,000,000 years at full speed. All 5 million ships of them. We could run the dynamos of all our systems for 10,000 years without stopping. And...
Pettigrew was wide-eyed.
Yes?
Karkdyke leaned closer.
Pettigrew, with just 1 quart of Rudy rays, we could make a whole new universe.
Pettigrew fanned himself uncertainly.
Good, said Karkdyke. I'll give you your orders. And before another word could be spoken,
he scrawled across a full page of the order blank. To all activities, Ensign Bigby O. Pettigrew, pursuant to verbal orders this date to the effect that he is to locate, isolate, and can 1 quart of Rudy rays, is hereby authorized to draw necessary equipment on the recommendation of supply and laboratory commands. Signed, Karkdyke. With a flourish he gave it over, and with a hearty handshake and a huge smite upon the back, Karkdyke propelled the ensign to the door. Pettigrew was thrust out, and the wind fluttered in the sheet he held. He looked at it, frowned a little, and then, squaring his shoulders manfully, strode purposefully on his way. Behind him, Karkdyke stood for a little while, devils flickering in his eyes, and something like a smile on his mournful mouth. Then he sat down.
"The first thing supply will send him for is a can of vacuum," said Karpdyke. "I figure that should take him a couple days. Then lab will want..."
But he shook off these pleasures and looked moodily at his assignment blanks. He'd have to have something new in 3 or 4 days. Pettigrew ought to be good for a solid month before he began to wisen up. "Sir," one of the Chief Raymaster's mate, "dispatches from base." He looked at them. "All routine."
"I'm busy,"
said Karpdyke, throwing them into the basket. He settled himself down to compound and compute the next mission of the luckless Pettigrew.
"Now then, Commander," he mimicked, "is there anything you want me to solve or fix up?"
He nearly chuckled.
Pettigrew, Pettigrew."
He grew mournful again, and the chief looked very, very uncomfortable as this time wore on. "Sir," ventured the chief, "that top dispatch says a new batch of officers is being ordered in here. About 15 ensigns, a couple of commanders, and 1 captain. Congreve, to take over as exec. That's the Congreve that was cited for his work on new fuels. He'll probably make this place hot.
Shut up," said Karpdyke. "I'm busy," and to himself, "when he gets chased all over the post with that, we'll try pink beta rays and maybe a left-handed Geiger counter." Then
there was a stuttering snarl out in the hangar and a heavy ground vibrations as a big motor warmed. The chief scowled. He looked at his assignment sheets and let off a couple of regulation growls. "No flights due off for a week. What's wrong with them monkeys?" He went to the office door and stood there, a little blinded by the pink daylight. He saw a number 30 star guide being dollied out by a tractor for a takeoff, and it wasn't the Space Admiral's barge, but a routine mission cruiser. And the peculiar thing about it was no lab crew standing by. When they had the star guide into position for its launch, one lone figure came shuffling out, climbed the ladder, and popped into the hatch. The tractor detached itself, and the tower waved all clear. There was something reminiscently all wrong about the man who had entered that ship, and the chief was almost ready to turn away when it struck him. "Pettigrew!" He started to run into the field, and then realized his complete lack of authority. He dashed back. Karpdyke was still absorbed. "Sir," said the chief, "that ensign's got a ship. He's about to take off." Karpdyke almost said, "I'm busy," and came alert and up instead. "Who?" "Pettigrew's got a ship. There." Karpdyke was stunned. He ran forward and then was slammed back into the door by the recoil blast of the star guide. One moment there was a ship, the next there was the dust. Pettigrew was gone.
"You sure that was Pettigrew?" cried Karpdyke.
"I seen him." Karpdyke breasted the flying clouds of dirt which lingered and got himself into flight operation. He slammed inside. "What's going on? Who is in that ship?"
"Ensign Pettigrew," said the warrant dispatcher.
"What?" cried Karpdyke. "Where's Lieutenant Morgan?"
"Sick bay,"
said the warrant dispatcher. He had been scared for a moment, but now he knew he was in the right. He was an old Navy man. An order was an order, and he had the copy right there.
"Why did you let that man get away?" "Sir," said the warrant, "I seen your order not 10 minutes back. We was to lend every assistance to Ensign Pettigrew. Well, we did."
Karpdyke was keeping upright by holding the edge of the signal rack. $1 million worth of spacecraft, the life of a new officer.
But that was just..."
He caught hold of himself.
"That order was intended to be seen by Morgan. The man was new." "I got the duty," said the warrant doggedly, "and I obeyed it."
Karpdyke went away from there with a complete panorama of a 12-man court-martial board staring him unsympathetically in the eye. What had he sent that fool after? Rudy rays. Knowing less than nothing about the fiery character of luminous masses, an ensign would burn himself to bacon crispness the first one he ran through. No ensign, no ship, no further career for Karpdyke. He had no choice but to declare himself guilty. He went into the outer office of the Admiral's suite and looked sadly at the adjutant. "Is he in?" "Sure, but..." Karpdyke went wearily by and breasted the barricades. Banning was rather fat, somewhat crotchety, and had a most wary eye upon his future. He had managed to live 21 years with the Navy without sullying his record, and if he could keep one more clean, he would be pleasantly selected up by his friends to some post as Galactic Commander with the rank of 16 stars. Today he was musing upon his happy future, making thoughtful steeples with his fingers and watching his favorite cat dozing in the daylight which poured in. "Sir," said Karpdyke, remembering suddenly that he had forgotten his jacket and cap. "A new man, Pettigrew, just reported. An ensign. He was awful green, and I sent him out with a funny order, and Morgan is in sick bay today, and his warrant obeyed the order, and now Pettigrew and $1 million worth of number 30 Star Guide are on their way someplace to get fried. I am turning in my resignation, and will hold myself." Banning's eyes went round as he attempted to digest these facts. Then he ordered a repeat, and when it had been carefully told 4 or 5 times with details, he suddenly understood that 16 stars might very well eclipse if such things were found to have happened on his base.
"Order up the cruisers. Send out 10 destroyers. Man the warning net,"
bawled Banning, and then he grabbed his cap and sprinted for the radio room. Karpdyke relayed the orders, and within 10 minutes, where peacefulness had reigned, great waves of motors began to beat, and the ground quaked under the impact of emergency takeoff. The men were not quite clear on what they were to do or where they were to go, and it took Banning several minutes on the shortwave to convince 4 or 5 irate commanders who objected to leaving so fast that they were not about to repulse a rebel attack. Meanwhile, a small dark radio man was having no luck with Pettigrew. "Sir," he said to Banning, "he can't have any channels switched on. I've tried them all, and probably he's outraced even the ion beams by this time. I don't think..."
"Don't think," cried Banning. "Don't ever think. Stop that ship."
But nobody stopped that ship. For 5 standard days, Banning's guard fleet raked and combed the surrounding space, and then, because they had left without proper provisions, began to return one by one, each with negative news. Karpdyke, miserable but not under arrest yet, because Banning could not stop worrying long enough to think up the proper charges, wandered around the hangars. He received very little sympathy. Hardly anyone on the project had escaped Karpdyke's somewhat heavy wit, and, combined with this, all crews present had gone without liberty or relief for a week. The project was very grim. The brig was full of people who hadn't saluted properly or had demonstrated negligence in the vicinity of Space Admiral Banning. Things were confused. At least 3 times a day, Banning picked up his pencil to send intelligence of his hair-brained accident to the department, and each time was stopped by his vision of those 16 stars. He could court-martial Karpdyke, but then it would come out that Karpdyke was notorious, and that Banning, being of the Hayes school himself, had never put a full astern on the practice. Banning was confused as well. 10 days went by with no word of Pettigrew, and out of complete weariness, the project began to settle into an uncertain sort of routine. The chaplain left the bridge table long enough to inquire whether or not he should read an absentee burial for the young officer, and was told off accordingly. Scout ships returning with routine data were ignored and immediately fell under the same gloom which was downing everyone else. Nobody spoke to Karpdyke. When the Admiral spoke to anybody, they got Rayburns. The post-publicity officer began to write up experimental releases about another brave young martyr of science, and the master-at-arms inventoried the scanty baggage of Pettigrew. People began to look worn. Then, at 4 o'clock of a September day, a number 30 star guide, rather singed around the corners and edges and coughing from burned-out brakes, came to rest before Hangar 6, and out popped a very second-hand version of Bigby Owen Pettigrew. People stopped right where they were and stared. "Hello," said Pettigrew. But the people just stared. Admiral Banning had been soon told and was coming up puffing and scarlet. Karpdyke slithered out of his office and tried to seem as if he wasn't present. "Hello, Mr. Karpdyke," said Pettigrew.
Young man,
said Banning.
where have you been?
"Are you Admiral Banning?" asked Pettigrew.
Answer me.
"Well, I guess I've been all around mostly. I scouted about 3 nebulas and almost lost the whole shooting match in the last one, what with the emissions and all. And I got pretty shaken up with the currents and reversed fields, and..."
What was the idea of taking off that way?
cried Banning. "Well, Mr. Karpdyke, he told me to go out and get a quart of Rudy Rays, and I..."
A quart?
cried Banning. Yes, sir. Seemed kind of funny to me, too. But he said these Rudy Rays was the germs of new universes, and so I..."
Rudy Rays?
"No, sir, I never heard of them either, Admiral. But orders is orders, so I went out."
You young fool, you might have been killed. You might have lost that ship.
"Admiral," said Pettigrew, "that's just the way it seemed to me, too. But when he said how powerful these Rudy Rays was, why, I recollected when I was flying the mail."
What mail? I thought you were a UIG man,
said Banning. "Oh, sure I am, sir. But 5 or 6 years before that, I was flying the Empire Mail. Then, when I found that new fuel you're using, they give me a scholarship to UIT, which was mighty nice because back in Texas, I never got much formal learning. And after I'd done some work on star clusters they said was new, why, I wanted to get back to flying again, so I figured this was the place to be. I ain't much of a hand about the Navy." This startling dissertation was abruptly punctured by the arrival of a cruiser which slammed down smartly enough to knock out a couple of window panes. From it stepped a splendid young captain who approached the waiting group and saluted the Admiral.
"Captain Congreve, sir. Reporting to relieve the exec. Oh, hello, Pettigrew."
There was so much warmth in Congreve's voice that Banning was startled.
You know this man?
cried Banning.
"I certainly do, and I can recommend him to you heartily," said Congreve. "Picked him myself after Universal Admiral Collingsby swore him in. He invented the billion-light-year fuel capsule. You've heard of him, haven't you? Well, you must have. I see you've been on a mission already."
"Yes, sir," said Pettigrew. "I was sent off to get a quart of Rudy Rays."
A what?"
"And I got 'em," said Pettigrew, pulling a flat jar from his sagging jacket. "Had quite a time and near got sizzled, but they're tame enough. I saturated sponge iron with them, and the filings are all here. Kind of a funny way to carry this stuff, but I guess you Navy guys know what you're doing."
Rudy Rays?
said Banning. 1,000-year half-life, said Pettigrew, and completely harmless. Good brake fuel, won't destroy grass. By golly, Mr. Karpdyke, it was awful smart of you to figure these things out. They ain't in any catalog, and I sure didn't know they existed. Technicians passed the flask from hand to hand gingerly. The counters on their wrists sang power innocuous to man and sang it loud. "That's all I could get this trip. Nebula 1, right slam being center of the universe," said Pettigrew. "Well, there she is. If you'll excuse me, I don't look much like a naval officer, and I better change my clothes." They stared after him as he went to quarters, the master-at-arms trotting after to break out his impounded gear. There was a queer, dazed look about Karpdyke, but Banning was not dazed. He fired some fast, smart questions at the technicians, and when they had examined the fuel in the lab, they gave him some pretty positive answers. Banning stood looking at Karpdyke, then, but not seeing him. Banning was seeing 16 stars blazing on the side of a flagship, and maybe not a whole year away after all.
Sir, stammered Karpdyke, I'm sorry. I came out all right, but I know I jeopardized equipment. He looked so young and green, I figured it would take a lot of roosting to make him an officer, and I never intended he would actually get off the base.
Captain Congreve looked mirthfully at Karpdyke, for the captain understood the situation now.
Commander, said Congreve, I wouldn't let this throw you. You see, the reason Collingsby swore that man is as an ensign and not as a lieutenant was because Pettigrew had something of a reputation in the Empire Mail.
A reputation? Said Karpdyke.
Yes, said Congreve gently. A reputation is a practical joker, Commander, and he had been warned about you.
A practical joker? Began Karpdyke, feeling most ungodly faint at what this would do to his reputation everywhere.
Karpdyke,
beamed Banning, clapping him on the shoulder in a most friendly 16-star blinded way.
supposing we all go over to the club and let us buy you a drink.
The end. What an awful one that was.